Welcome to this edition of the Osteopathic Functional Approach to Injuries. Today we're going to be focusing on shoulder impingement. So just quickly I want to orientate you to the diagram behind me and then we'll get started. This is the humerus, so the bone obviously on the side of your arm, scapula, which is commonly called the shoulder blade, clavicle, also known as the collarbone, and this thing here is the acromion, which is actually part of the scapula. It kind of comes around and hooks forward like this. Impingement happens when you lift your arm up and you get a little pinch on the muscle that goes underneath this acromion. So in the subacromial space, there is this little muscle here called the supraspinatus. Now, why does that happen? This can happen because there's a lack of timing between the humerus moving up and then the shoulder blade moving up as well. So there's a ratio that some people talk about of 2 degrees humeral movement to 1 degree of scapular movement. And that's true in a thing called the scapular plane. So some of you may know we've got a sagittal plane here, we've got the frontal plane which is kind of to my side. But my scapula lies in its own plane, and that's roughly the scapular plane. So that applies to the scapular plane, but doesn't really apply too much to internal or external shoulder movements or lifting the arm up in front or even lifting the arm up behind. So let's not worry about that ratio too much, but let's worry about the coordination of movement between these two bones. Now, there's lots of reasons for shoulder pain. There is rotator cuff tears, ligamentous tears, so these little ligaments here can tear. There is bursitis. There's a whole slew of reasons why your shoulder hurts. This is just one of them. So don't watch this webcast and think, right, that's what I've got. Now get it checked out by a professional. But if you have a diagnosed shoulder impingement, you've tried internal, external rotation with a band for rehab, you've tried this empty can rehab, you've maybe even tried cortisone shots, now this webcast is for you. So the scapula, what we want to do is find out why the scapula isn't moving in a coordinated manner with that humerus. So the scapula sits on the back, on those ribs, just up here. Now if my back is kind of bent forward and not very flexible, my scapula has to move from this bent forward position. And it's at a slight disadvantage. For example, if I'm taking my arm up above my head here, my arm can only go as far as my scapula will allow me, which can only go as far as my back will allow me. So that's the first thing to look at. How stiff is the back? Then if you see from this example, if I keep my back fixed but I move my hips, I still get more movement in the range overhead and I'm just moving my hips. So if the hips are tight, that can affect the back, which can affect the shoulder. Lastly, if we go right down, we can actually look at the feet and the ankles. If one ankle doesn't work, you can have problems in the opposite shoulder. For example, I've seen a few clients recently who do CrossFit, and they do an overhead squat with an Olympic bar above their heads and they're squatting down. But one of their ankles, or what I've seen is one of their ankles not working properly. So when they go down, that ankle binds up and stops moving, but the other ankle carries on going. And so if you can't see my ankles, but if you imagine my left ankle is tight and I squat down and my right ankle keeps going, I'm going to get a twist in my pelvis. Now if I have my hands above my head, I'm also going to drop the bar forward on one side, but I don't want to do that because that will make me lose balance. So I pull that arm back, really working this shoulder and actually setting this shoulder up for injury, especially if my back is tight. So the solution for an injury for a solution for them is to actually work on the left ankle, which will then put the pelvis in the right place, which will then allow the back to be in the right place, which will then take away the impingement from the shoulder. So what I want you to take away from this is that rehabbing the actual injury itself with internal, external rotation exercises or cortisone shots, that can work. But in cases where it doesn't, you've got to look wider. I haven't mentioned up in the neck, that can affect the shoulder. I haven't mentioned the other shoulder. One shoulder can actually affect the other shoulder in the way they work together. And the last thing I didn't mention, which is something worth considering, is when the hands are fixed on something, so in the press-up position or against a wall or on a pull-up bar. When the hands are fixed, the chain reaction changes down into the shoulder. And so similar principles apply. Look wide, but it's not going to be the same reactions. As always, email us, inquiries@theenglish.osteopath.com for any more information. Take care.